All right, ready to dive into Bitcoin.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
So many people want to understand this revolutionary technology, and we're going straight to the source for this deep dive. The research paper that started it all. Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system.
Oh, the Bitcoin Bible.
Right, published back in 2008 under the mysterious pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto.
Yeah. Who is that guy or group? Nobody knows.
It's like the Bitcoin Constitution. This paper lays out the foundation for this whole new system.
And what's so fascinating is that even today, no one knows who Satoshi really is. Like, was it a single brilliant mind or a group of like tech revolutionaries? It's a mystery that makes this whole thing even more intriguing.
Totally. Talk about a mystery wrapped in an enigma. This paper proposed a solution to a problem that honestly most people didn't even realize they had back then. Okay, so picture this. It's 2008. Online commerce is taking off. But every transaction, every single one, requires a whole chain of intermediaries.
Right. Banks, credit card companies, payment processors.
Taking a cut.
Yeah, and slowing things down.
Ugh. It's like trying to send a package across the country, but you have to pass it from person to person. And you just hope and pray it doesn't get lost or damaged along the way.
And don't forget about the trust involved. I mean, each intermediary adds another layer of complexity to the whole thing and a potential point of failure, right? Not to mention all the limitations. Like, think about transaction sizes, the risk of fraud, and the near impossibility of reversing a transaction even if you had a really good reason.
Yeah, and that is so different from using cash. I mean, I hand you a $20 bill, and that's it. Transaction done. No intermediaries, no fuss.
Exactly. And that was the core problem Bitcoin was designed to solve. Could we somehow replicate the simplicity of cash, the anonymity, the irreversibility of physical cash, but in the digital world?
So instead of just trying to, like, tweak the existing system a little bit, Satoshi was like, nope, we're flipping the table entirely. That's bold. Tell me more.
Okay, so Bitcoin at its heart is a digital coin, but it exists as a chain of digital signatures. Imagine a digital ledger that's constantly being updated. And in this ledger, each transaction is like a link in a chain.
Wow. Okay. So instead of having like a central bank that's issuing and tracking every dollar, Bitcoin relies on this shared public record of transactions. That sounds honestly kind of chaotic.
That's where the real genius comes in. So the question is, how do you prevent someone from spending the same Bitcoin twice? You know, the classic double spending problem.
Right, of course.
Now, traditional systems, they solve this with a central authority. But that defeats the entire purpose of decentralization, right?
Okay, so how do you create a secure system when there's no central authority calling the shots? This is where I imagine things get really technical, right?
It does get technical, but it's actually quite elegant the way it's set up. Bitcoin uses two key innovations: a decentralized timestamp server and something called proof of work. And those are really the foundations of its security.
Okay, I think I'm following. But break those innovations down for me. What exactly is a decentralized timestamp server? And what kind of proof are we even talking about?
Okay, so imagine like a digital notary public. This notary, their only job is to verify and timestamp every single Bitcoin transaction. So it's virtually impossible to tamper with the order of events that's your timestamp server.
Right.
Now picture this notary being replicated across countless computers all over the world. That's the decentralized part. No single entity controls it. So it's incredibly resistant to manipulation.
So instead of one bank's ledger, you're saying everyone has a copy and they're all constantly cross-checked. It sounds incredibly secure, I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But also incredibly complex. So how do you make sure everyone's copy of this ledger stays in sync?
Yeah.
And accurate?
That is the question. And that's where proof of work comes in. This is like the engine that keeps this whole decentralized system running. Think of it like a global competition, okay? You've got all these participants called miners, and they're all racing to solve incredibly complex mathematical puzzles.
Like a global Sudoku championship or something.
Kind of, but with way higher stakes. So the first miner to crack the code, they get to add the next block of transactions to the ledger. Their solution is like proof that they've done the work, proof of work.
So it's like a high-stakes treasure hunt, but instead of digging for gold, they're crunching numbers. But what's the treasure? What motivates these miners to dedicate so much computational power and electricity, I imagine, to this?
It's all about incentives. Miners are in it for the Bitcoin rewards. Each time a miner successfully adds a block to the blockchain boom, they receive newly minted Bitcoin.
Wow, so there's a financial incentive built right into maintaining the system. That's actually really clever. But what about the people who are actually using Bitcoin for transactions? If all their transactions are being recorded on this public ledger, how is their privacy protected?
That's a great question, and it's something a lot of people get hung up on. So Bitcoin achieves a certain degree of privacy through a system of public and private keys. It's kind of like having a secret code that unlocks a safe.
Okay, I like that analogy.
So anyone can know your public key. That's kind of like knowing the location of your safe.
Yeah.
But only you, the holder of the private key, can actually access the contents of the safe.
So it's like sending a postcard versus sending a sealed letter. Like the message itself, the transaction might be public, but the sender and receiver's identities, they remain private.
You got it. But it's more accurate to call it pseudonymity rather than complete anonymity. It's not that you're invisible. It's more like you're not directly identifiable just by looking at the blockchain. It's similar to how we track, say, stock market trades. You can see the transactions happening, but you don't necessarily know who's behind them.
Okay, so we've got this system.
Yeah.
Right? Transactions are pseudonymous, secured by this massive, decentralized network. Miners are competing to solve complex puzzles. It's impressive, I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But is it foolproof?
Good question. That's what keeps cryptographers up at night.
Really?
Yeah, they think about this stuff all the time. What if someone with enough computing power...
Like a rogue nation state with a supercomputer.
Exactly. They could try to hijack the whole system.
Hijack it how?
It's called a 51% attack. Basically, if someone gets control of the majority of the network's computing power, well, they could rewrite the rules of the game.
Okay, that sounds terrifying. So they could, like, rewrite history, double spend their bitcoins, everything falls apart.
Theoretically, yes. It undermines the whole idea of a decentralized, trustless system.
So how likely is this attack to actually work?
This is where Bitcoin's design really shines. It's incredibly difficult and, more importantly, wildly expensive to pull off.
Okay, because?
Remember those complex math problems we talked about? The ones miners race to solve? Each block added to the blockchain represents a massive amount of computational effort.
Right. So to rewrite history, an attacker would need to.
They wouldn't just need to outpace the entire network once, they'd have to do it constantly for as long as they wanted to stay in control.
And that gets expensive.
Exponentially more expensive over time. Think of it like compound interest, but in reverse. Every new block added to the blockchain makes it harder to rewrite history.
So the odds of actually pulling off a 51% attack...
Astronomically low, especially on a network as big and decentralized as Bitcoin.
So it's more of a theoretical risk than a practical one? Phew. But still, all this talk of computational arms races and theoretical vulnerabilities, why should the average person even care about Bitcoin?
I think that's the most important question.
Right.
Bitcoin is a totally different way of thinking about money and finance. It's built on cryptography, not trust.
Which is kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
Right. It's a currency that's free from the control of governments and institutions.
And it all started with this 9-page research paper, published anonymously. Who knows what other groundbreaking ideas are out there just waiting to be discovered.
That's what's so exciting about this space. We're still in the early days, and the possibilities are truly endless.
Well, a huge thank you to you for joining us today for this deep dive on Bitcoin. It's a journey that took us from the nitty-gritty of cryptography to the potential of a decentralized future. And for our listeners, if you want to explore further, be sure to check out the show notes. We'll have links to resources on blockchain technology, the origins of Bitcoin, and the ever-evolving world of cryptocurrency. Until next time, keep those minds curious and remember, the future is waiting to be decoded.